You did well today, Mr. Bennett. Just keep that ice bag on your knee for 30 minutes or more if you need it. You already took an ibuprofen and an acetaminophen, so no more for 3 hours. Yeah, I remember. When will you be back? Well, today is Monday. You do your exercises tomorrow and I'll be back on Wednesday. Remember, on Wednesday we start an earlier schedule. There'll be no more of these late morning workouts. I'll be here at 9 and then you'll have the rest of the day to yourself. Sounds good. Travel safe, Megs. I'll be here. That last bit made her chuckle. I wasn't going anywhere just yet. She was pleasant enough when she's finished, but a freaking sadist when she's working me over. 10 days ago, I had knee replacement surgery on my right knee. I heard stories about post-op physical therapy, and there was nothing about it that sounded good other than, it won't last forever. I figured I could push my way through just about anything if I knew there was an end in sight, but I guess everyone I know must have a higher threshold for pain than me. This was torture. The whole idea behind physical therapy after knee replacement is to get at least a 90-degree bend to the knee. Sounds easy, right? The surgeon cuts the tissue, and then the tissues mend by reattaching the fibers and growing together. The problem is, the cut segments tend to attach to anything nearby, and the physical therapy is designed to break all those undesirable attachments until the knee once again operates correctly and bends as intended. Think about that while you pour me a beer. The therapist got in her car and drove off. Her name is Maggie, if anyone cares. She's actually a good kid, but she has no pity. She's heard the screams before and knows that pain is the path to recovery. When I'm feeling generous, I do call her the kid. I'm guessing she's in her mid-20s and I'm 57, so she's a kid to me. Not that it matters, but my name is Henry Bennett, and I build custom kitchen cabinets in a small 4-man shop that I own. And, yeah, one of those men is a woman and she's a damn good carpenter and cabinet maker. But I'm old school and saying 4-person shop just doesn't sound right. I've been thinking about expanding the business to include furniture, and Windsor chairs mostly, so retirement isn't something I'm considering. It seems like I'm up and down all day, squatting and standing, and then kneeling on that hard floor, so one way or another the cartilage wore out in my knee, and I wound up with some factory replacement parts. So I'm sitting here by my front window with my leg up, ice on the knee, and I'm watching Megs drive off when I notice Jenny Carpenter pull into her garage across the street. The Carpenters are in their late 20s. Chris is also a carpenter by trade, which makes his name all the more ironic, and he was working hard to build his own small company of carpentry contractors. They did good work and were sought after by homeowners who needed home repairs and remodels, as well as the mid-size companies that often needed to hire in some additional talent. I know he had dreams of expanding his company so they could become the prime contractor for new home construction, and we had long talks about how to grow a young company. That was something I knew a little about. Meanwhile, Jenny is an attractive blonde who works for one of the big investment houses in the city. I liked her. I'm thinking to myself, they really are the perfect couple when I see a black BMW pull into her driveway. You don't see a lot of those in this neighborhood, and you don't see guys in expensive suits walk into a neighbor's front door like he owns the place. But I saw one that day. I watched Jenny's place while I ice my knee. After a half hour of icing my knee, I make my way into the kitchen for a sandwich. I know it sounds crazy, but I can't carry a plate and a drink while I use this damn walker to get back to my living room. So I pack the sandwich in a paper bag and pour my drink into a to-go cup, put both in the basket on the front of the walker, and make my way back to my chair. I dropped in my seat, and the BMW was still there. I've still got some ice, so I put the ice bag back on my knee while I sit there and watch my neighbor's house across the street. Time passes. It's a long hour before the suit finally leaves. 10 minutes later, the garage door opens and Jenny leaves too. Okay, I tell myself there are 1,000 perfectly good excuses for what I just saw. Jenny isn't the type. I try to put it out of my mind, but I'm just so damn bored sitting here. Damn it, I need a book or a puzzle or anything to keep my mind occupied. The shop called twice with some fairly simple questions. I suspect they were just keeping in touch so I didn't feel left out. With nothing else to do, I decided to look through a few books on chair design, and I began to pore over ideas for a line of simple, stylish chairs that we could make in the shop. I was still sitting there in the late afternoon, alternating between having my leg up and doing my bending exercises, then going to get a bag of ice while I worked through books on chair design. As I read, I drew some design ideas. I was trying to develop something traditional, but comfortable. It was growing dark when I happened to look up and noticed Chris's truck pull into their garage. Jenny's car was already parked in its usual place. That's when my mind returned to that black BMW and the driver with the fancy suit who seemed to act like he lived there. I began to gather my drawings and notes when I saw Chris making his way across the street. He was headed for my house. I made my way slowly to the door and opened it just as he arrived. I stepped back to let him into the house, which was more difficult than you might think with that damn walker. "Chris, what brings you here?" "Well, Jenny thought that with you convalescing and not able to spend a lot of time on your feet, you might like some home-cooked food. So she packed up a dinner for you and sent me across the street to deliver it." I laughed. "I love that girl of yours." As we made our way slowly back to the kitchen, I asked, "What did your lovely wife fix for this tired old man?" "First of all, you aren't old," he answered. "But I am tired." I was still laughing, but Chris was the real first visitor I'd had all day if you don't count Nurse Payne, and I was enjoying the company. He set the food on the table and began to unpack it. There was a big bowl of corn chowder and some ham biscuits with a nice salad. "My God, there's enough here for the both of us." "Oh no, no way. If I eat even a bite of it, my wife will find out and I'll be in a heap of trouble. That's all for you." I admit that I was smiling now. "I guess there's enough here for dinner and for lunch tomorrow. Please tell your lovely wife thank you from me. Now, can I offer you a beer before you make that long and arduous hike back home?" Chris was smiling, and he knew my thanks were sincere. "No, she'll be waiting for me. I'd better get moving. I'll try to stop in tomorrow evening." "I'll be here. I've got nowhere to go for the next few weeks," I answered. As quick as that, I walked Chris back to the door, shook his hand, and he was gone. As I watched my friend walk back to his house, I thought about the value of good friends and thoughtful wives. I'm sure I'm wrong about her, I thought. She's not the type. I enjoyed my dinner that night. I also felt like I'd accomplished something with my drawings and notes, so I spent the evening watching television and reading. I also went through another bag of ice. Then, with another ibuprofen and an acetaminophen, I headed off to bed. Tuesday was largely uneventful. I fixed a simple breakfast of yogurt and granola with a glass of orange juice, took ibuprofen and acetaminophen, and then carried my coffee to my living room chair. I sipped my coffee while I gave the pills about 20 minutes to work, and then I started the unpleasant business of exercising my new store-bought knee. No pain, no gain. My exercises start with a series of simple motions like leg raises and ankle movements. Then I start the reclining knee bends, and when I'm ready, I use an elastic band to pull my ankle toward me and force the knee to bend. I do repetitions, and by the time I'm breathing like a long-distance runner, I'm ready to stop and ice the knee. It's not hard work, but it takes a lot of discipline to pull that band knowing it's going to hurt like hell. For the next half hour, I content myself with propping my leg up and applying ice. It's mid-morning before I'm ready to get on with my day, and I get back to working on those drawings that I started yesterday. Sitting by the window, I work and watch the world go by. Neighbors come and go from their houses. Dan Williams is out cutting his lawn. He's retired and has turned maintaining his lawn and property into an obsession. I guess that's what happens when you don't fish or play golf. The Daniels are out for their late morning stroll, and later Herb Jackson goes out for his run. The UPS truck delivers some boxes up and down the street, and eventually, the mailman delivers the mail. Funny, but nobody seems to see me sitting by my window. I'm working away and glancing out the window when I see Herb walk up to the Perkins front door and let himself in. That's strange. Jim Perkins is away on business this week. I keep watching and try to work, and it isn't until an hour later that he leaves by the back door, walks down the driveway, and heads back toward his house. I tell myself that I'm letting my imagination get the better of me, but at the same time, I'm starting to think that I might be living in my very own Peyton place. Is this what goes on when I'm off at work every day, and exactly what is this I'm seeing? There must be an acceptable explanation, so I try to shake it off and get back to work. By the time night falls, I've done my exercises 3 times, taken my pills every 3 hours to stay ahead of the pain, as they say, and I finished off the last of Jenny's corn chowder and ham biscuits. Chris is home, and I didn't see Jenny until her usual time, so once again I try to shake off the thoughts I've been having. Wednesday morning comes, and soon Nurse Payne arrives. I had just enough time before her arrival to fix a light breakfast, to settle those 2 pills in my stomach, and fix some coffee as an early reward for what was to come. She was particularly hard on me that day, but she claims my knee is coming along nicely, and she's expecting full mobility. I reminded her that I was never that flexible to begin with, but she just ignored me. I offer her a cup of coffee before she leaves, but she tells me, "I've tried your coffee. You could use it for furniture stain." I try to tell her that there was a time when some cabinet makers did exactly that, but she's just shaking her head and telling me, "See you Friday. Do your exercises and keep applying ice." Nurse Payne was gone, and I sat back with a bag of ice on my knee to finish the last of my cold coffee. After that, it becomes a repeat of the day before. Dan is working in his garden that day, the Daniels take their morning walk, and I see Herb Jackson visiting Sally Perkins again. I'm telling you, it's a goddamn Sodom and Gomorrah. The lunch hour comes, and I'm preparing to fix a sandwich when I see Jenny Carpenter pulling into her garage. So I settle back into my chair, and 5 minutes later that black BMW pulls up, and the suit walks into the house through the front door. This time he's there for nearly 90 minutes, and I spend the time wondering how stupid I'm going to look if I say something to Chris and it's all a big mistake. I tell myself that I don't know her family. The suit could be her brother or a cousin. He could even be Chris's brother. I don't know. The rest of Wednesday passes uneventfully. Chris never made it over for that beer on Tuesday, but later Wednesday evening I heard a knock at the door. "Is that invitation for a beer still available?" "Sure. Do me a favor and grab 2. I'll meet you in the living room," I answered. We spent a pleasant hour before Chris had to head for home. I watched him closely during that time and never detected a note of unhappiness or distraction. If anything was going on, he didn't know. I thought about asking him what he might know about BMWs or if he had any relatives who had one, but I decided I could never pull it off. So I let it drop. Thursday was a repeat of Tuesday. I divided my time between exercising and icing my knee, then I'd work on my designs, take some pills, and repeat. Life was becoming boring and predictable. Meanwhile, Dan was developing the fine art of washing his car, the Daniels took their walk, and Herb visited Sally Perkins. That old fart was getting more action this week than I'd had in 2 years. I suppose I should explain that last remark. You see, my wife Peg died 2 years ago. She was my lover and my best friend. Her death was just a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time when a distracted city truck driver ran through a red light. I was assured that she didn't suffer, but I sure as hell did. I keep her photograph on the table by my chair. Both our kids are off building their lives as they should be, but it does get lonely sometimes. They offered to stay with me during my recovery, but I told them I'd be okay. After all, I had Nurse Payne to take care of me. When I told my kids I was prepared to be stuck at home for a few weeks and that I'd laid in a few cases of beer to see me through, my daughter looked at my son, and the next thing I knew, the fridge and freezer were full. I was only kidding. Friday came, and Mags was her usual punctual self. I was prepared with breakfast, pills, and coffee, so she didn't waste any time getting ready. She starts in on me. You're progressing quickly, Henry. You must be doing your exercises religiously. If I'm progressing so damn quick? Damn, that hurt. How come you keep working me over like a redneck prison guard? You have experience with prison guards, do you? She asked. I swear I don't know whether to laugh or swear at this woman sometimes. The latest torture session was over, and she returned from the kitchen with the ice bag. I know the weekend is coming, but I want you to continue your exercises both Saturday and Sunday. I take a deep breath and nod my head. Then I'll see you again Monday, okay? She answered. Okay, I replied. You don't sound enthusiastic, Henry. Are you becoming immune to my charms? Okay. That gets a little laugh out of me as I swallow a response that I would regret later. You have a good weekend, and I'll buy some new locks for the door before Monday. She chuckles. Next week, we'll start working with a cane and try to get you off that walker. I like the sound of that. It's a deal. That's what passes for banter with Nurse Payne, and with that, she was gone. Friday continued like every other day. Dan was trimming the bushes along the front of the house, the Daniels took their walk, and Herb visited Sally Perkins. I was thinking about how life had become so horribly predictable when the black BMW pulled into the Carpenter driveway. I must have missed Jenny pulling into her garage. I wondered if they had a regular Monday, Wednesday, and Friday schedule and how long had this been going on. I fixed myself a sandwich and treated myself to a beer, then watched quietly until the suit left with Sally following him 10 minutes later. A horrible sadness came over me then. I liked these two, Sally and Chris. They were thoughtful and kind. They always seemed loving and attentive toward each other. What I was seeing now seemed so horribly out of character for her. I searched my imagination for a credible explanation and admitted that it was all conjecture on my part. But it bothered me terribly. That weekend I did two things. I watched to see if the suit visited while Chris was home, and I started making plans. He never visited, and my plans developed quickly. I worried greatly over what I was considering. If you asked me whether I was certain that I was doing the right thing, I'd have told you, I don't know. This much I did know. If I approached Jenny with anything resembling an accusation, she would deny it, and I would be labeled an insulting old man and lose two friends. If I approached Chris, he would blow his top at me, and again I would be labeled an insulting old man and lose two friends. If I ignored it, I would have difficulty looking Chris in the eye and pretending to be his friend as I kept the painful truth from him. The only solution was to help him see for himself and hope I was wrong. I spent the weekend developing a list of my needs if I expand the shop as planned. By then I was thinking about some tables to go with those chairs. I needed open space to move large pieces of wood into position at the machines, and I needed 240-volt power in multiple places. I also needed space for workbenches where I could work by hand fitting mortise and tenon joints, and then I needed clean space for finishes. Basically, I needed to at least double my current space. I drew up some ideas playing with multiple concepts until I realized that I also needed additional space to store my wood because tables need large pieces of hardwood, whereas cabinets use a lot of high-grade plywood with quality veneers for the boxes. It was turning into a big job. I went to bed Sunday night with a heavy heart knowing that the coming week would most likely be painful for someone, but I also knew that the someone might be me. Monday morning came, and with it came Nurse Payne's arrival. I knew the drill, and by then even I knew we were making progress. If torture meant I could return to work, bring on the torture. She left me once again sipping my coffee and balancing the ice bag on my knee. I tried to work, but my mind wouldn't focus. Dan was cutting his lawn again, and the Daniels took their walk. Jim Perkins was back from his travels, but he still had an office in town where he worked, so Herb visited Sally Perkins again. I could not help but wonder why someone would stay married if they felt the need to cheat on their spouse. Was it money, security, or just a bad habit? Was it a game for them? Some despicable way to bring a little excitement to their boring lives? I suppose they probably thought they'd never get caught. I liked both Herb's wife and Sally's husband. They deserved better. Noontime came, and I watched Jenny pull into her garage and lowered the door. 5 minutes later, the black BMW pulled into the drive, and I watched the suit once again walk into the carpenter's house like he lived there. My mind was made up, and I knew what I had to do. An hour later, the suit left, and then Jenny left a short time later. It broke my heart. Monday afternoon and Tuesday passed uneventfully with me trying to keep busy, fielding the occasional call from the shop and watching the neighbors. Nothing seemed to change. Wednesday morning, I watched Chris head off to work. Mags arrived and gave me a working over, and then I sat with my ice and my coffee watching her leave. It was time. I picked up my cell and called Chris. "Chris Carpenter here." "Chris, it's Henry Bennett. How are you doing?" I asked. "Good, Henry. To what do I owe the pleasure?" That line cut through me like a knife. If things went as I expected, there would be no pleasure in this for anyone. "I was wondering if I could tempt you with a sandwich and beer for lunch," I answered. I could hear him chuckling. "Wow, it's hard to turn down an offer like that. And while you're here, I'm thinking of expanding my shop, and I'd like to see what kind of ideas you might have." Chris thought for a moment. "Sure, I could stop by tonight and we can work over what you have for ideas." Now came the big whopper. "Actually, my kids are talking about visiting tonight, and I have everything worked out here. I was hoping you might come around, say 11:30 or noon today." I hated lying to him like this. "Sure, why not? I could use a break in the routine." "Okay, I'll come round for lunch and we can talk about the new shop." "Great, see you then," I answered. I felt terrible. There were a dozen ways this whole thing could go wrong, starting with Chris calling his wife Jenny, and the suit don't get together today, she sees Chris's car in my driveway, and so on. I felt fairly sure I could claim ignorance either way. But doesn't that make me a coward? Sadly for everyone, Jenny and the suit were as predictable as all my other neighbors. Chris arrived at about 11:45 and joined me in the front room. I had all my notes and drawings arranged, and after Chris got us each a beer from the fridge, we settled down with sandwiches, chips, and a cold glass. It would be downhill from there. We sat at the table by my front window and started going over my list of needs as I saw them. I showed him a drawing of my current shop and began to show him sketches of the sort of thing that I had in mind. At 12:05, Jenny pulled into her garage. Chris watched for a moment with a slightly confused but happy smile on his face, and then we resumed our discussion. We were at a fairly productive point in the plans when the black BMW pulled into Chris's driveway at 12:10. Chris was speaking and stopped suddenly as the suit got out of the car and again walked through his front door as he lived there. I watched my friend without speaking and waited. He tried to return to the drawings, but to no avail. I suppose 10 minutes passed with Chris trying to speak, trying to study the plans, but returning to watch his house, until my friend just said, "Excuse me." Without another word, he rose, walked out the front door, and crossed the street to his own house. It was odd, but I could swear that this time I watched a man walk through his own front door like he no longer lived there, and I wondered if he would be my neighbor for much longer. My window was open, and moments later I could hear the commotion. There was screaming and shouting, and it sounded like furniture was being thrown. I heard glass breaking and the loud thuds of what I assumed were chairs hitting the wall. Shortly after that, the suit came running out the front door half-dressed, jumped in his car, and raced away. It was silent after that. Time passed, and just when I began to worry that Chris might have harmed his wife, he left his home as he had entered it and walked back across the street and into my house. He just dropped onto my sofa with that 1,000-mile stare I'd heard about and said nothing. I figured my job was to wait until he was ready to speak, and in time he said, "The cheating woman was loving him in our bed. Can you believe it? Jenny, of all people?" I stood and handed him the remains of his beer, saying, "Here, drink this and I'll get you a refill." He threw it down in one gulp. Thinking he needed to let it out, I said, "You saw them?" He just nodded. "You're sure it was consensual?" I asked. He spoke like he was in a daze. I heard her. She was a willing participant. For all my watching and planning, I didn't know what to do next. So I got Chris that second beer and sat back down to be the concerned listener that I assumed he needed. He finally started up. A husband should never be expected to see what I saw. My wife was naked with that jerk. She had her legs wrapped around him and was making all the sounds, only louder. She was enjoying it. Then Chris looked at me and said, "I saw him when he climbed off her. He's nothing special." This was going to be a slow discussion, and I needed to let my friend talk as much as he wanted. When he'd been silent long enough, I said, "I heard a lot of noise like glass breaking and furniture being thrown. You didn't do anything you'll regret, did you?" "No." Then after a pause, he said, "Not unless you count marrying that cheating woman in the first place?" It was about this time that I saw Jenny's car back slowly down the drive. It seemed to hesitate for a time and then drove away. I think I just saw Jenny drive off. Yeah, I told her to get her cheating back out of the house. Chris's hands were shaking, and his color looked like death. I knew this next bit was going to go over badly, but it needed to be said. You need time to come to terms with what just happened. It may not be the end of the world. I'm not saying it will be easy, but I do know that girl loves you. Maybe you can patch things up once you've had a little time to think about it. The look he gave me was not encouraging. That's when I made my big mistake. Thinking that misery loves company, I blurted out, "You're not alone. Herb Jackson is over at Sally Perkins' house every day while her husband is at work." Chris just shook his head in disgust and muttered something under his breath. Then he turned to me. "You knew, didn't you? That's why you asked me to come over today. What is it? Does that jerk show up every day like clockwork?" I tried to stay out of it, but Chris would not be denied. "Well," he pressed. With a very reluctant voice, I said, "Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays as best I can tell." "For how long?" Chris's rage was building. "Last week and now this week. I don't know how long it's been going on." For a time, I stopped worrying about Jenny and started worrying about myself. Chris was showing signs of a beaten man, and there was anger in his eyes. I remember thinking to myself, that's what happens when a wife cheats on her husband. She robs him of his pride, and then the anger takes over. For a time, Chris's rage seemed to dissipate as my friend dropped his face into his hands and wept. I had all kinds of regret at this point, and again I wondered if I should have just turned a blind eye and let things happen as they were destined to happen, but those idiots were parking his car right in front of the house where all the neighbors could see it. What did they expect would happen? At least Herb tries to be a little discreet, not that I respect him anymore for it. It was a long and largely quiet hour after that as Chris nursed his second and eventually his third beer. I tried to find ways to assure him that he was justified in whatever he did, while reminding him that she did love him even if it didn't seem it now. I don't know how much of it got through. His cell phone rang. Chris told his office that he was out for the day, and eventually he headed home after I invited him to stay as long as he wanted. He just shook his head, saying, "I need to face this sooner or later, and it might as well be sooner." He left his car in my driveway and walked back to his house a broken man. An hour later, he was back, and I poured him another beer. He said, "I cleaned up most of the mess. There's probably still part of that broken mirror in the carpet." When I asked how the mirror wound up broken, he smiled. The jerk ducked. The chair missed him and hit the mirror. In a silly attempt at support, I said, "I was surprised he was able to leave under his own power." "Yeah, I regret that," Chris replied. "Just as well. You don't want to go behind bars for that jerk." He just shrugged and shook his head as if he wasn't sure. We sat and drank well into the evening. I heated some leftover pot roast in a failed attempt at sobriety while Jenny never came home that night. Then long after dark, Chris made the lonely journey back to his own place. Thursday morning, Chris's car was still in my driveway, so I called his house after a suitable time in the hope that he might be up and sober. He didn't answer the first time, but he did a half hour later. He'd been in the shower when I first called. I asked him, "Are you interested in getting some breakfast? I can cook, or you can drive us out someplace." "Why don't I drive?" "Are you okay to drive?" He just gave me a sad laugh and said, "Yeah, I can drive. I'll be over in 10. Good to his word, he was at my door 10 minutes later. We hit a diner in town where I figured it was again my job just to listen if he wanted to talk. There were other people around us, so we kept it quiet. Jenny had called late the night before in an effort to apologize. She talked through her tears, and to Chris's credit, he kept his temper in check. He wasn't ready to see her, so she said that she would be at her sister's house when he was ready. I didn't hear much about their struggles after that. Chris would come by once or twice every week, and we would drink a few beers while he would ask vague and largely introspective questions about marriage. I got the distinct impression that things were not going well. That impression was confirmed when the for sale sign went up in the front yard. He told me they were divorcing, and he was thankful that they had no kids as yet. The most telling thing he ever said about the whole matter was that Jenny had admitted in therapy that she was very good at compartmentalizing her life and that her lover had nothing to do with their marriage. Chris just shook his head and muttered, "Psychopath," and that was the end of our discussion. He did learn that the affair had gone on for longer than he could forgive. It was sad to see their marriage end, and I asked myself many times if I should have simply turned a blind eye in the hope that Jenny would wise up and Chris would never learn of it. Inevitably, I would then ask myself how I would feel if I were in Chris's position, and every time I decided that I would hate the friend who kept that secret from me. Jenny and Chris divorced and went their separate ways. It was years before Chris would trust another woman, but when he did, he seemed to choose well. He met a widow his age with young kids, and she knew the value of fidelity. Chris had always wanted kids and took to fatherhood like a duck to water. We remained friends, and he did build the addition on the side of my shop. As for me, I never remarried. I told you that my wife died 2 years before my knee surgery. She was everything I ever wanted in a partner, and I miss her to this day. I figured one was my limit and never tempted fate again. However, I have a few girlfriends who place no claims on me, cannot get pregnant no matter how hard we try, and still like to sleep with a man from time to time. Yes, menopause is our friend. I have a good job, great kids, and company when I want it. Life is good. However, life is not so good for one Herbert Jackson. It was about 2 weeks after Chris discovered his wife with that suit. I was sitting by my front window. By then, I was getting around pretty well with a cane and dividing my time between the office and my home. I wasn't quite ready for the shop floor just yet, but I was slowly getting there. I was looking through some drawings for some kitchen remodeling jobs and working up some quotes when I heard the familiar sound of glass breaking and furniture hitting the wall. I looked over at the Perkins house, in time to see a naked Herb Jackson come running out the front door and down the street with his pants in his hand, followed close behind by Jim Perkins swinging a baseball bat. I said to myself, "Caught another one." Jim looked highly motivated, and I placed Herb's chances of getting home at no better than 50-50. I never did find out who tipped off Jim Perkins, but I suspect it might have been a very angry carpenter who lived nearby. A week after that, I was finally back on the shop floor, working late, and thanking Providence that I was no longer sitting in my front window watching the lives of my neighbors in my very own Peyton Place. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. My name is Matt Kaufman. I am 6 foot 1 inches tall, 195 pounds. I have blonde, going to gray hair, and pale blue to steel gray eyes that change color with my mood. Carrie called them my mood rings. I am 45 now, but when I discovered her cheating, I was 41 and a highly successful stock trader. I also write fiction novels, mostly Western post-Civil War shoot-'em-ups. I had a high seven-figure yearly income and thought I was in a perfect marriage. My wife, Carrie, was 39 and a successful real estate broker. We had been married for 15 years and had 2 kids. Kathy was 12 and Jerry was 10. We lived, and I and the kids still live in an upscale gated community on Reeds Lake in East Grand Rapids, MI. That is an expensive suburb of Grand Rapids. As I said, I was and still am a highly successful stock trader. I have a surprisingly good ability to pick stocks that have a short-term gain. I am right about 35% of the time. I started with penny stocks and found out that it was a head rush to take a stock whose price could be less than $5 and watch it explode upward in price. When you were buying at that price, even one winner out of 4 was profitable. I was much better than that. Just one example. I bought 500 shares of a small pharmaceutical company that discovered a possible breakthrough cancer drug. I paid $2.45 per share for a total investment of a little over $1,200, and the company was bought out by one of the big pharma corporations at $52 a share. I held it for an additional year, and the stock split 3-for-1 at $52.37 a share. I sold out and made a profit of over $77,000. Not all of the stocks did that well, but I made profits of over $5,000 on most of the successful stocks I traded. I seldom held a stock for more than 18 months, but I held most for 6 months minimum for tax reasons. My writing had started to be very profitable also. I was offered big bucks for the movie rights to 3 of my novels. I would get the money even if the movies were never made. The contract was for an 8-year period. I enlisted in the Army after high school and was medically discharged after 15 months of a 4-year enlistment. I was a training accident statistic. I lost my left leg below the knee in training when a new recruit driving a Humvee plowed into the training company I was in as we were marching to a training class. I was lucky. 3 of the company died, and 2 more were paralyzed from the waist down. The rehab was well over a year long. One bad or touchy thing is I am very sensitive about being called or classed a cripple. After I finished my rehab, I took my disability pension and my GI Bill benefits and enrolled in college. I didn't have a clear goal, but I wanted to learn. I discovered that I loved the intricacies of the stock market and of writing. My degree major turned out to be finance with a minor in creative writing. I did not wish to stay in the dorms, so I bought a nice 3-bedroom house just off campus. It was priced right, as it was in a changing neighborhood that was undergoing gentrification. I figured to live in it until I graduated and then sell it. I figured that even if I only got 90% back, it would be cheaper than the dorm costs or renting a house or apartment. When I sold it, I broke even, and a nice young couple with a new baby had a good, inexpensive home. I met Carrie Nation Darwin, named that by her mother, who was a member of the Women's Christian Temperance Union when we were seniors in college. I was taking an elective in real estate sales, and she was in the class to finish her major requirements for a degree in real estate management. She sat next to me on the first day of the class, and after we introduced ourselves and talked some, we decided to create a study group to work together in the class. We posted a notice on the study group wanted board, and when we finally pulled it down, we had a group that, besides the 2 of us, included 3 men and 2 women. We met 2 nights a week at my house. The women were serious, and 2 of the men were too. One man, Gary Radabow, was of the opinion that the rest of us should do the work and give him the notes. He also decided that all 3 of the ladies, and they were ladies, were conquest material. He lasted about 2 weeks before he got slapped by Carrie for putting his hand on her crotch when she was sitting next to him. I ordered him out of my house and told him he was not welcome here again. He did not take it well and threatened to beat the cripple with his fake leg. About a week before midterms, the group and I were walking out of class when someone called my name. I turned and was hit in the face by something heavy. I was down and out for the count. I woke up in a hospital room. Carrie was in the chair in my room. She looked like she hadn't slept or changed clothes since the class. She had my prosthetic in her hand, and I could see it was damaged. It seems that Gary decided after he knocked me out that my fake leg was a good weapon and tried to take it and beat me with it. Carrie told me that she and a professor grabbed him and forced him to drop the leg. Martha, one of our study partners, picked it up and wailed on Gary with it. It turned out I had a broken cheekbone and, additionally, 2 broken ribs from Gary kicking me before he could be restrained. Gary ended up with a concussion, was expelled from the college, and was arrested for his assault on me. His parents were very rich and tried to make it all go away by hiring a legal team that rivaled O.J. Simpson's. Then the family tried to throw money at all of the witnesses. Then they tried to buy me. No one took the money. Gary was not well liked. Gary came up for the trial and pled guilty to felony assault as he thought he had a plea deal in place. However, in our state, we have a victim statement phase of the sentencing portion of any violent crime trial. I made my statement while still in a clear facial mask to protect my reconstructed cheek. Think of the pro basketball players and their protective masks for broken noses. And I detailed what had made Gary seek to hurt me and asked for at least some jail time. I told them how he had taken my prosthetic and was going to use it as a weapon while I was on the ground. Then I played the school security camera footage that showed Gary striking me with what appeared to be an axe handle. He got 24 months in jail. I filed suit against his trust fund, and they threw a wheelbarrow full of $100 bills at me. I got several $1,000,000 and all legal and medical expenses. Just to rub it in, I made sure that the fund replaced my damaged fake leg with a new state-of-the-art one. The new one even had distinct toes. As I was healing, Carrie was right beside me through all of the pain. With the study group keeping me up to date on my classes, I graduated on time. After graduation, I bought an apartment building in the downtown business district. After I bought it, several tenants expressed a desire to have the building go condominium. I filed the papers, and when the smoke cleared, I made another bundle and had the penthouse condo for myself. Carrie got her real estate sales license, and I got a job in a brokerage house. We dated for 6 months, and I asked her to marry me. She said yes. We decided to have the wedding planned for the next spring, and we did the meet and greets of parents and siblings. My family was impressed with Carrie. Her parents were a problem. At least one of them was a problem. Her father shook my hand with a smile on his face. Her mother was a pinched-faced, angry woman who said that she had big plans for her daughter. She told both of us that those plans did not include being married to a cripple. Carrie did not make any protest about her calling me a cripple. I left and did not wait for her. The following weekend, Carrie came to my condo and asked me if we were still engaged. I hotly responded, "I don't know. Can you stand to be married to a cripple that you chose not to defend when your mother insulted him?" She teared up and, not saying anything, handed me the engagement ring and left. The next Monday, she was sitting in the reception area of my office when I came in. I looked at her, and because I was still hurt and angry, told the receptionist, "I am not taking any visitors or appointments today." I went into my office and closed the door. Carrie called me. I told her I thought she had made herself clear at the condo, and so we had nothing to talk about. Then I hung up the phone. When I got to my condo that evening, I could smell something cooking before I got in the door. Carrie was in the kitchen, and she was slamming pots and pans around as if she had a really good mat on. I went into my bedroom and changed clothes, took off my company leg, and put on the repaired plain one. I went back out, and Carrie was sitting at the kitchen table crying. The stuff on the stove was burning, and the smoke alarm chose that moment to go off. I turned off the burners, turned on the exhaust fan, and pulled the battery out of the smoke detector. I turned as Carrie put the condo key on the kitchen table, got up, and headed for the door. I intercepted her and sat her back down at the kitchen table. "You are not going anyplace until you get yourself calmed down. I am sorry for the way I was mean to you this morning at the office, and when you called me, but you never tried to defend me when your mother spouted her anger and venom. I was hurt. I was also very angry, and if your mother had been a man, I would have punched her." She sat there for a good 5 minutes, still sobbing. Finally, she said, "Matt, I was shocked and didn't say anything because I couldn't believe my mother would say that. I knew she had a rich second cousin she wanted me to marry, and I had told her I detested the slime bucket. After you left, my dad came over and slapped my mother and called her a harridan, and he packed up and left. I went back to my apartment, and I cried for a couple of days and made myself sick. It took 2 more days before I could go to work. I came to talk to you this past weekend, and in my mind assumed that you had decided you did not want me anymore. Then this morning I was going to ask if we could start over. When you went into your office and closed the door, I was not surprised, and then you showed me how I hurt you when you hung up on me. I knew I was going to have to work very hard to try to win you back. You know I don't think of you as a cripple, don't you?" I responded, "I know you never said anything about my leg. But when you didn't say anything when your mother called me a cripple, I jumped to the conclusion that if you didn't agree, at least you were embarrassed to have it pointed out so you couldn't ignore it. I will not be the cause of your embarrassment over my injury, and if it embarrasses you, we should end everything right now." I continued, "I was hurt. Then you showed up almost a week later without a word in between and gave me the ring back without me asking for it. I knew we were done then, and I was hurt again." That started the tears again. I finally picked her up and took her into the bedroom, covered her up, and went and laid down on the couch. The next morning, Carrie woke me up and told me to call the office and take a day off. I called work and was told to solve the problem and hurry back. I was also told to do as much as I could from home through the office intranet connection, using my sign-on and password. Carrie left to get some clothes for the day, saying she would bring back breakfast. About an hour later, she returned with 2 covered plates from the local diner that we both liked. She handed me a plate that had the biggest Denver omelet I had ever seen. She must have had the restaurant make it up special. Hers was the same on a much smaller scale. After breakfast, we talked for almost 2 hours. Carrie apologized again for not standing up for me against her mother. I waved it off, and we decided that we did not need to start over, but to restart. I gave her the ring back. We still had some problems, Marie. Carrie's mother kept trying to throw roadblocks into our plans. She told Carrie to insist on a prenup. I agreed. Then she insisted on an abuse or adultery clause to the prenup. I agreed. She finally told Carrie to have the prenup say all premarital assets would remain the property of the originating person and that all assets earned in the marriage would be split 50-50 if divorced, except if the adultery or abuse clause is the reason. In that case, all marriage assets would go to the injured party. We signed. Then she wanted an accounting of my assets. I said sure, as soon as I get an accounting of Carrie's assets. That shot that down. I had told Carrie before her mom made the demand that I was rich, but not how much I had. She had told me she had a trust fund that gave her a stipend monthly. She did not tell me how big the fund was or how much the stipend was, and I never asked. Then dear old Mom tried to shove different guys at Carrie. It got so bad that Carrie stopped accepting invites if I wasn't included. We never went over there. The final attempt was when Marie told Carrie she would not be at the wedding. Carrie said, "That is your choice. My father has agreed to walk me down the aisle, and his new lady can stand in for you." Marie said okay, she would come. Just when I thought the roadblocks were over, Carrie informed me that her mother claimed that I was seen in a motel with another woman. I asked if she believed that. She said she didn't know. I took off the engagement ring and showed her the door. I decided I did not need the drama and definitely did not need the distrust. A week later, I got a letter from Carrie. "Matt, I am so sorry for doubting you. When I pressed Mom for the dates, she told me one of the dates and times was when we were at dinner together. I know I messed up again, but I was being bombarded with those claims from my mother. I finally started having doubts. I love you, and I am sorry that I let my insecurity and my mother make me doubt you. If I do not hear from you, know that I know you never were a cheater or a liar. You were the best man I have ever known, even better than my own dad. Again, I am so sorry. Carrie. I read the letter and thought an appropriate response was required. I was still very angry and hurt. Miss Darwin, in case you did not understand the significance of my removing the ring I gave you, let me spell it out plainly. I will not marry someone who doesn't trust me. I will not marry someone who believes lies from somebody she knows dislikes me. I will not marry someone who would allow her future husband to be insulted. Does that make things clear? Now that I have vented, here is what I will promise the woman I love enough to marry or even get engaged to: fidelity, protection, loyalty, and love. I have been exclusive with you from the first time we dated after I finished my injury regimen. I have loved you and only you since the second date we went on. I have made plans and promises with and to you. If you think that those things are not enough, then this is our last communication. If you can't trust me, don't contact me again. I have agreed to take another position with my firm and will be moving out of the city. I have sold the condo, and as of next Friday, I will be gone. I have left instructions at the office and with my attorney that no one but my immediate family is to be given any information about my new job or its location. I still have to work this week, but please do not try to contact me if you don't trust me. Even if you do trust me, I will be taking a new position, if for no other reason to get away from your mother's meddling. Your former love, Matt. I sent the letter to Carrie's office in a company envelope. I did not want anyone but her to read it. She apparently ran home to Mama because, sure thing, Monday morning the shrew was on the phone to gloat. You wimp, I know you weren't cheating on Carrie, but you're just a stupid, poor, nothing of a cripple, and she deserves more and better. Then she hung up. Carrie finally called late Thursday. It was just before quitting time, and I had already made arrangements to have Friday off. If she hadn't called then, she would not have gotten hold of me. Matt, before you leave, can we meet to talk? Please, there are things I need to say and things you need to know. She added, I know I messed up, and you had the right to break up with me. I just don't want you to leave with you hating me. I don't hate you. I am angry. But it is not hatred. I just can't forget the lack of trust and the lack of respect you showed. I see no reason to talk, especially when your mother, remember her, the mother that lied to you, called first thing Monday morning to gloat and insult me some more. How did she even get my office number? I'm sorry. I guess that I needed to talk to someone when you took the ring back. I might have left one of your cards at her house. Please don't leave me without us talking face to face, she replied. Okay, I know I shouldn't, but I will meet you at Seymour's pub at 8 tonight. I will talk to you, but I make no promise or even hint that we will get together again. Just remember, I will no longer be around after tomorrow. 8, and if you decide not to show, everything is done. I'll be there. I love you, Matt, and I want you. I will grovel if necessary, she replied. 8, not 8-1 or 8-2, 8. Then I ended the call. Well, she was there on time, and the first thing she asked was, Can I come with you to your new job and new city? I can sell real estate anywhere in the state, and if I am with you, I won't be hearing my mother spew her venom. I was shocked. I had never imagined a request like that. I told Carrie that I needed a minute to think. After a few seconds, I decided that I wanted to be with her. We moved to the new city, and Carrie found a job within a week of our move. My new company was paying for an extended stay hotel suite for us until I could find an apartment or a house. Carrie's job was in an office about a block from mine. I found a nice house in the Forest Hills suburb of Grand Rapids. I didn't really have a reason to do it as I did, but I only put the trust fund's name on the deed and tax records. We had not gotten married yet, so the prenup made it mine as long as I wanted. I broached an idea I had to Carrie. Let's both contribute a set amount into a household account every month, and anything above that would be the earner's mad money to do with as he or she pleased, I added. As of now, my salary and bonuses are almost twice what hers were, so for now, I will contribute 66% of the household account. If kids come along, I will contribute 100% while you are not working. but taking care of the kids. She thought that was a great idea, so we set it up to start. She would put in $3,000 per month, and I would put $6,000 in. That amount ensured that we would be building a decent nest egg for future house maintenance. We decided to go ahead and get married in Grand Rapids. Carrie's dad, his new girlfriend, and my family were the only guests. Carrie's mom was angry to the point of vowing to never speak to us again. Or I should say, I never did speak to her again. It turns out Carrie did. We honeymooned in Honolulu. We spent 2 days on the beach and the rest of a 3-week trip exploring the sights and the other islands. We spent a whole day just walking the forest in the nature preserve. We explored the open to the public areas of Mauna Loa volcano. Then we toured the remains of the leper colony that we were allowed into. It was a glorious start to our life. Life was great. Carrie was moved from mundane cold traffic to the exclusive section of the real estate firm. We had Kathy, and Carrie took 4 months off and arranged for a live-in nanny. We then had Kenny and moved to the house in East Grand Rapids. We survived the normal kid traumas and their pushing of the boundaries we set for them. Childhood diseases and scrapes and sprains were lived through. The school was a fight for only the first week or so, then the kids decided that learning stuff was fun. About 6 months after our 13th anniversary, Carrie started to question any time I was out of the house. I had quit working in the brokerage and just used them for my trades. I spent my time writing. I had more than 30 novels and anthologies published, and had 4 or 5 ready to go to the proofreader. The only time I was out of the house was when I was in New York to talk to my publisher, or in Chicago to talk to my business manager about my contract renewals or movie rights. I was getting the mama's meddling vibe from Carrie, and I called her out on it. She admitted that she had reconciled with her mother but had not gone to see her as she knew I would blow up if she did. I didn't say anything. I just went into the bedroom and started moving her stuff into one of the guest rooms. She saw what I was doing and decided that discretion was the wise thing and did not say a word until I had everything moved. Then she asked why. I wondered where all of this suspicion was coming from. Has your mother told you I was cheating again like she did before we were married? Did she ever come to see her grandchildren? Did she ever realize that I could buy and sell that jerk she wanted you to marry? You know, the one you called a slime ball? Well, she didn't say anything and just started sleeping in the guest room. She never again questioned me about where I was going or who I was meeting with. It was strange, though. Shortly after that, she started telling me she was told by her boss to start showing houses on Tuesday and Friday afternoons. As an exclusive listings agent, all of her showings were by appointment only. After about 6 months of this, she slipped up. She came home one day in different clothes than she left in. I started to pay more attention. I also started to make arrangements to protect myself and my kids if she was cheating. About 3 months later, things in the home had gotten more contentious. Arguments were much more frequent and nastier. The final straw came when she said angrily, "You can't even work like a normal person. Being an author and writing fantasies for the masses to devour is perfect work for a cripple, I hope." She stopped right there, as she knew she had stepped over the line. I reached out to her and turned her toward the door and pointed. "If I am not to your liking, it is 17 steps to that door. Don't let it hit you in the back during its closing. Call me a cripple again, and you can go home to Mommy." I decided to do some investigating. About 2 weeks after the cripple comment, I decided to follow her on Tuesday. She went from lunch to a Motel 6 on the South Belt Line, 28th Street. There she met with her mother and the slime ball. I started to follow her the next Friday, and no mama, but 2.5 hours with one of the guys from our college study group. This went on for a month. Same motel, most of the time the same room, just 4 different men, including one of my cousins. A real womanizer with a 3rd wife and 5 kids. I was sitting in Denny's restaurant on a Tuesday afternoon watching the Motel 6 across the parking lot. My wife's car was parked next to my cousin's. I had watched them both go in the same room an hour ago. This particular time was the 5th time that I knew of. It was also the 4th different man she had met alone in this particular motel in the last month. One of the men was her office manager, George Wilson. One of the other men was the second cousin of her mother, the one she called a slimeball, who also worked in the same real estate office. The fourth was Tom Morton, one of the guys from our college real estate study group. She had even brought him to our house once at least. Every Tuesday and Friday she was there at the motel when she was supposedly showing houses. This time, I would have a semblance of revenge. I called the prearranged number and said, "Room 107 again, Greg Kaufman is today's victim." I watched as two cars pulled up and a young lady got out of one of them and a photographer got out of the other. The girl knocked on the door while the photographer was taking pictures through the undraped window. The girl had her phone on so I could hear. Carrie came to the door but only showed her face while hiding behind the door. The girl was wearing a recording device. "Are you Mrs. Matt Kaufman?" "Yes, I am." "How did you get this address information?" she replied. "Your husband, Mrs. Kaufman, you have been served. Is Mr. Greg Kaufman in this room with you?" "You obviously know he is," Carrie said with a snarl. Then she turned to the inside of the room. "Greg, get your back over here and take what this child needs to give you." He came to the door. "Mr. Greg Kaufman, you have been served." Then turning back to my loving, cheating wife, "Mrs. Kaufman, a Mr. Wilson, and a Mr. Claremont from your real estate office are being served as we speak. Mr. Thomas Morton will be served as soon as we can locate him. Here is a restraining order for you. It requires you to not return to the Kaufman residence in East Grand Rapids and to maintain a minimum of 300 feet from Mr. Matt Kaufman and his children. Do you understand?" She whimpered. "Yes, I understand. I'll bet the cripple has done something to my mother also." The girl said, "I would not know about that. But your husband did ask me to point out the window where he has been watching from." With that, she turned and pointed at me, and I waved to my soon-to-be ex. Well, things went better and worse than I thought they would. Carrie hired a shark of a lawyer, and he wanted to void the prenup, saying that the engagement and marriage that it covered had been called off. The judge did not buy it. Carrie's attorney wanted court-ordered counseling. The judge agreed. I refused, and I was jailed for 30 days before the judge gave it up as a lost cause. Carrie wanted custody, but when Kathy told the judge that several times Carrie had brought strange men to our house, the judge denied that motion. Then came the ultimate insult. Her lawyer wanted the decree to be changed to irreconcilable difference so that his client could share in the marital assets. I had my lawyer present all of the photos and reports about her cheating. The divorce was granted, and Carrie did get to keep her personal savings. All other assets became mine only. She got unlimited visitation as long as a court or child service official was present, and she could not take them overnight or out of state. The guys, well, they got what they deserved. Greg was divorced, and his wife took what was left of his assets. The real estate people were all fired, divorced, and could not get a job in our area, so they moved to different states. Tom Morton was never found, and I never pursued it after the divorce. Carrie's mother was ecstatic for about 90 days. Then she found out the grandkids could not come to visit her, and I would not allow her in my house. Nobody wins in a divorce, but I got everything I expected and moved on with my life. Carrie was dutiful in her visitations until she decided to marry the slimeball. Then they moved to the West Coast, and we have not had a card letter or phone call since. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.